Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome. My name is Angela Foster, practitioner of architecture in Wellington, New Zealand, and thank you for the opportunity to express some ruminations as a result of further study I am currently undertaking. Sorry I cannot be there in person. Travel from the Southern Hemisphere is currently very limited, and the time zone for live presentations is a little tough. My research title is Developing, but currently sits as The Politics of Urban Design, a comparative study of barriers and opportunities for urban development in Wellington, New Zealand, and Melbourne, Australia. From Donald Watson, urban design and city building is surely amongst the most auspicious endeavours of this or any age, giving rise to a vision of life, art, artefact and culture that outlives its authors. It is the gift of its designers and makers to the future and is essentially an ethical endeavour, inspired by the vision of public art and architecture and reified by the science of construction. Watson's quote raises an interesting question. In today's climate, where artists no longer act autonomously under the pressures of increasing public scrutiny, how can we deliver good urban design? With the demand to address infrastructure, urban sprawl, and sustainable growth, how do we develop in such a way that those funding the projects are encouraged to contribute successfully to the cityscape through a simple, nimble, and inclusive process? As a Wellingtonian, I've worked as an architect in the New Zealand construction industry for over 30 years. During the last 10 years, the planning process has become increasingly difficult to navigate, and as such, there have been few examples of positive urban interventions, and at present only 2 cranes in Wellington. In 2013, during a relatively stable economic time in New Zealand, John Key, the then Prime Minister, seemed to recognise the city's dilemma and quipped publicly that Wellington is dying. I have placed 2 Google images side by side from a prominent location in the CBD. It's from 2009 to 2019. As you can see, there is very little change. By comparison, on a visit to Melbourne, our informal sister city, I witnessed an urban environment with 145 cranes and a booming economy. And here again, I have placed 2 Melbourne images side by side from a prominent CBD location from the same 2009 to 2019 period. Wellington is a beautiful harbour city, and it has a name for itself as the arts capital. And in the early 90s, there was a flurry of construction which had lasting and positive impact for the city. Melbourne has a similar business, cafe and cultural demographic, and yet Wellington lacks the development growth that is so evident there. But after the introduction of a new district plan that linked into the Silver Bullet of New Zealand legislation, the Resource Management Act, the responsibility for our cityscape shifted to under-resourced local governments, requiring city leaders to design, finance and deliver multi-sector economic development initiatives, which were once seen as the responsibility of central government. Heralded as a bold new way to simplify the process, it was designed to manage the quality of the natural environment in urban areas. But the lack of any real direct reference to urban conditions resulted in any construction being seen as negative, due to the inevitable effect on consumption of resources like wind, sun, and the effects on existing structures. The unanticipated consequence of the Act was that the council projects were subjected to increased public objections. As public approval was now required, as a result they faced the negative effects of their own policies, and their own planning approvals proved harder and harder to obtain. As development was not seen as positive, in effect, we fell into a period of austerity urbanism. The phrase applies where governments have had to adopt to uncertain futures and political economy by retrenching and spending less, which directly impacts on the maintenance of the urban fabric. When governments retrench on public development, it comes to pass that this can affect general business confidence and ultimately private development retrenches. After a while, the system slowly ceases to function. On the other side of the ditch, under the guidance of Matthew Guy, the Victoria State Planning Minister between 2010 and 2014, and nicknamed Mr. Skyscraper, Melbourne's economy boomed, and 90 inner city high-rise towers and around 85,000 apartments were approved within that short period. However, the blanket approval of large developments wasn't received well by the general public, as infrastructure investment and livability were not pursued as aggressively. In 2014, a scathing report tabled by a senior Melbourne City Councillor found that apartment towers in central Melbourne were being built at 4 times the maximum densities allowed in some of the world's most crowded cities. As a result, the City of Melbourne looked to develop a new strategy for the city and took control of its own planning processes. To start the process of re-engagement with the community, For Future Melbourne was developed and a participation process undertaken, canvassing 2,000 residents to generate a citizen jury report containing 9 goals for the city, which were broken down into key measurable deliverables, and created the City Council Plan 2017 to 2021. Now Melbourne is again booming through public engagement and public participation. The Council was able to do this as they are unfettered by policies like the Resource Management Act in New Zealand. In Melbourne, one example of the readily accessible information is the development activity model, where you can see all lodged plans and approved buildings in your area. You can click on each square to get a description of each site with a simple link to plans and imagery. There is also another part of the site where you can search by street name. So the key differences between Wellington and Melbourne is the level of public transparency and their willingness to share the information they have to effectively build trust. At this point, I would like to add an interesting recent development in New Zealand. Our COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan was announced on the 3rd of May. This first new initiative is a law change that will fast-track eligible development and infrastructure projects through the Resource Management Act to help get New Zealand moving again. Apparently, the consenting and approval processes that are used in normal circumstances and still have to be used by private developers do not create enough certainty and do not deliver with enough speed to respond to the economic fallout from COVID-19. Interestingly, a number of the projects put forward have been stalled previously as a result of the consultation process set out by the Resource Management Act, and consultation here should not be confused with an integrated participation process. So, in secrecy, with no public scrutiny, a small group of infrastructure and business experts will make their recommendations to Cabinet Ministers, where there will be no public participation, with the only criteria being jobs and timeliness. So to get back to the opportunities created by public engagement. Alongside Melbourne, there are a number of other cities realising the benefits of engagement through looking to involve the community and to ensure regional concepts are promoted, like in Vancouver with the Vancouver Plan, San Francisco's Spur, and the UK's Cave, although this no longer exists. One city that has been making real headway into innovative processes is Copenhagen, renowned for implementing the Putting People First policy, where the goal was to strengthen the urban experience through good urban design and through participation in the democratic process. Specific architectural initiatives were also incorporated across a number of ministries to ensure policies include the people and place in all aspects of Danish life. They put this into practice by facilitating public-private partnerships and developing a philosophy of integrated urbanism, referring to linking of social, cultural, environmental and economic aspects of urban space. An urban design collaborative growing up in this environment is Archilab. Their ethos revolves around developing spaces through social cultural exploration and empowering communities to participate in good sustainable design. Gollum Mathur, a professor at the School of Social Work at Monmouth University, states education of people is also a prerequisite to participation, noting that when we engage with the citizens, we need to generate a collective of people who share a passion about place and try to understand it better. Where citizens learn to engage in the participative process and where the end result is better for it. Archilab took this bottom-up philosophy to the next level and created the Co-City app to do just that. It's a smart app which allows everyone to engage in the transformation of the city. You take a picture of your interest area, you make a collage that illustrates your vision and upload it to the web. The outcome is a collection of collages that are made accessible to all citizens and municipalities. The Co-City app is a tool that encourages citizen involvement on the go. It allows people to share visions and dreams concerning their local urban environment, but it can also enable decision makers to get a real-time image of their city through the eyes of the citizens. So these two new technologies really highlight that traditional methods of public participation in government decision making simply no longer works. They do not achieve genuine participation in plannings or decisions. They do not provide significant information to public officials that makes a difference to their actions, and they do not satisfy the members of the public that are being heard. They also do not represent a broad spectrum of the public and in fact exclude a large proportion. Institutions can no longer exclude citizen involvement on the excuse that they see it as a threat to speed and certainty. To be a true democracy, be inclusive and increase livability through a content population, such involvement is necessary to lead a change in urban planning representation and practices. So then the question is, how do we engage with the public effectively? As mentioned previously, consultation here should not be confused with integrated participation processes. The public, often referred to as stakeholders, are individuals and organisations that are affected directly or indirectly by a project or a decision, as well as those who have the ability to influence the decision both positively or negatively. They can also be people who simply have an interest in the project. So when we engage with citizens, we seek to create communities of practice, a collective of people who share a passion about place and try to understand it better, where we join forces with the citizens to develop places together and learn from each other through the participatory process. When we use good design processes, we not only create and empower these communities and individuals, but we also reach true good design, sustainable to the ever so complex needs and wishes of the everyday. So how do we do this in environments where most city powers have been circumscribed by governments, where public sector workforces do not have the expertise necessary for today's disruptive challenges, and the relationship with the national governments no longer exist? If we look at bottom-up principles in the environment where we want ongoing civic participation rather than momentary engagement, digital communication technologies create new avenues for empowering stakeholders and to share information and to generate dialogue. The capacity of diverse groups to scrutinise development proposals, advocate differing agendas and affect change can be escalated with the convenience of new digital applications. As a result, both public and private sectors can generate a climate of trust, and this can facilitate new approaches to better negotiated citizen involvement. In Pittgard's paper on the analysis of public participation in the design of an urban park, the notion of striving for design excellence or innovative solutions can be achieved through providing good visual information to public participants so that they can understand and evaluate the visual at a more informed level and as a result be more actively involved. As with politics, city citizens have delegated power to representatives, but these representatives are proving to be a bottleneck as they are disempowered to make decisions directly because of a dysfunctional Resource Management Act process, one which dictates consultation but without real engagement. So what we need is real collaboration to support the decision-making process and the outcome to do this simply and nimbly. Social media has opened up unprecedented new possibilities of engaging with the public. We have an opportunity to assess and guide our open government initiatives, which can focus on transparent, interactive, participatory, and collaborative public engagement that are largely enabled by emerging technologies. There are a number of apps out there in the general political realm. One proponent of these systems and an augmented democracy is Cesar Hidalgo. He has a radical suggestion for fixing our broken political system: automate it. In a provocative TED talk, he proposes a theory that uses technology, namely AI, to bypass politicians. Using algorithms, citizens create personal AIs, representatives that participate directly in the democratic decisions, doing away with the need of a representative, as ultimately your avatar becomes your stakeholder in the political process. Although this may be a few generations off, the theory of collective decisions through technology could be the future as it expands our understanding of democracy. And yes, there is a downside. We've all heard of the Facebook role in Brexit debate. Carol Caldewa is an investigative journalist, and on returning to her hometown Ebbsvale in the South Wales Valleys, she came across a public who was significantly influenced by social media and was blinded to the real EU investment of £460 million into infrastructure projects. In this instance, technology was used to mislead, but everything has two sides. So as architects, we market our designs every day, and in the critique process at university, we sell our ideas to our peers, and in the boardroom, we pitch our solutions as the ultimate. As a species dominated by the visual, in this new world of the uber-informed, as architects and urban designers, we need to adapt and to learn how to use this technology to sell our future projects. Like with the CoCity app, if we inform our public, they become less wary. We have never had so much of a tech-savvy public within which to do this. Ops Matter Devon Maloney conducted a global survey of 17,000 individuals and identified that now more than 70% of workers use apps regularly on a daily basis. So could we not walk our streets and be informed of local developments as we pass by? Could we have the option of both limited, a yes or no swipe, a Tinder app for urban design if you will, with an option to learn more about the project if desired? This information could then be collated in a rating system for urban design panels to progress projects in a timely and cost-effective manner. Could this level of transparency in the city promote an unprecedented city spirit, where we are nourished by a sense of social responsibility, are constantly reinforced by the everyday contact in a less formal scenario that engenders quicker decisions and provides the speed and certainty that New Zealand government so desires, but without the draconian measures imposed under the ruse of a crisis aversion necessity. In my lifetime, I hope to see this process as the norm. Thank you.